the second project, Friendship Opens All Doors. Amazing. The recording is also going on. So as I mentioned, we have gathered here today for an important meeting which is dedicated to our eTwinning projects. Those two projects are Open the Window, There is a Big Space Ahead, and Friendship Opens All Doors. Those two projects include even 10 countries, which are Georgia, Ukraine, Croatia, Greece, Turkey, Poland, Bulgaria, Romania, Italy, and North Macedonia. So you can see what a vast variety of countries and teachers and students are participating. To ensure the success of our project and support the development of participants, we have decided to invite an experienced expert to help us enhance our creative writing and reading skills. It is a great honor to introduce to you today Mr. Vladimir Papic. I really hope that I said your surname correctly. If it's
it's correct. It's
correctly,
correct.
amazing. So Mr. Papic is a Croatian language teacher at primary school Šijana Pula, who has extensive experience conducting creative writing seminars for both primary and secondary school students. Mr. Papic will share valuable advice on how to improve writing skills, how to incorporate creativity into texts, and how to refine the expression of our ideas. His knowledge and experience will be highly beneficial for the project participants, as our goal is to encourage students not only to engage as readers, but also to become creative authors themselves. Therefore, we would love to thank you very much, Mr. Papic, for accepting our invitation, for your time, and thank you everybody for your active participation, because we're confident that this meeting will be both fruitful and inspiring for everybody. And I would like to tell everyone that whenever Mr. Papic is finished with his presentation, you are more than welcome to ask him any questions. Therefore, please listen carefully and write down all the questions you might have for him. So without further ado, I'm giving the floor to Mr. Vladimir Papic, and you can start telling us more.
Okay, do you see the presentation now?
We can see the presentation, yes.
Okay, great, great. So my name is Vladimir. As Jamza said, I work in a primary school in Croatia. I conduct creative writing workshops for a long time, 10 or 15 years. And today I would like to share with you some of the tasks I came up with during my time as a teacher. So in the first slide, we can see how to make the composition of a story. The first thing that is needed is introduction of the character, getting to know him, to know his routine, how can his day go without any interruptions. What is his normal day? What does he do? What does he feels? And for this example, I took a student, imaginary student, of course, Ivan Maric. He tells us he's the 7th grade student from a primary school in Pula. He's introverted and he has problems expressing himself, and the other kids. Okay, so he is introverted, and because of that, other children constantly tease him. He avoids them in his way to the school. The next thing we gotta have in a short story for children or short story overall is a plot. That's an event that stands out from the everyday life, so something unusual. And for this part, I have decided to use a magical plot because kids love them. So in this plot, a gnome or a dwarf, however you want to call him, stands out from the forest, stands before Ivan, and Ivan is in shock, and he doesn't even have the time to think about it. But another gnome comes and while Ivan is still in shock, he's taking his backpack and running to the woods with it. And Ivan is telling us about this. So if you don't want the plot to be magical, you can use characters like a bank robber, a famous person, an alien, a boy or a girl we don't know. a child from another country, and etc. We will stick to this plot, and in this plot, Ivan was still in shock, but he had his homework in the backpack, and he had to run after the dwarf or the gnome, however you want to call him. And he got so deep into the forest that he couldn't see anything. And at one moment, he just started seeing blinking eyes, and those were the eyes of the forest gnomes. They were all kind of curious to who is this boy that came into their kingdom, let's say. And here we have the climax. That's the explanation of the unusual event. So you have to remember in the stories that you have to make the plot logical, and you have to convince the reader that that's something that it could happen inside the logic of the story. So what happens here is this elder comes to Ivan and says a story about how the dwarves won't even exist anymore if no one will tell their story. And his task, Ivan's task, will be to tell the gnome's tale, or they will be extinct. So Ivan is still thinking about what is happening to him. He just can't believe his eyes. And the gnomes tell Ivan what they needed to tell him, and then a storm comes to the forest. Ivan have to close his eyes, and when he opens them again, he's standing outside of his school, and he's running inside of his classroom. And there, the teacher asked him why is he late for like half an hour, and he's just kind of puzzled what to say because that's a pretty unbelievable story. This is I forgot to say the resolution and the ending where you have to explain after the climax how the event unfolded. So he said he's kind of shy about speaking, and she believed that. And he said he always wanted to be a writer, and he's going to write a story what happened. And the teacher read it and asked him to read it in front of the class, and he's finishing the story. I don't know if they believed me, but do you believe me? And we'll come back to that later. So, what are the important ingredients of a story? It's the introduction, a setup for the character world and the problem. And then we have the plot, introduce a unique event or a challenge, the climax, reveal the core conflict or explanation, resolution. You have to resolve the conflict and return to the character's routine. And then you have the ending, maybe leave room for some reflection or engagement of the reader, of course. Uh, what I want to talk about next is we have different perspectives. So we had just one perspective, and that's the one of Ivan. And that is just a small part of the general truth, of the bigger truth. So for the story to be maybe more interesting, we can use characters, not just the characters of the people, of the creatures, but they can also be animals or objects. So the story will be different depending on who is telling it, and it might describe some event, but the story will never be exactly the same. And by retelling the same story through different characters, we will always discover something new and realize that things are not as simple as they seem at first. So what I like to do next is go to take some to tell you about some other characters from this story and see how will we see this story in the ending. So first we had Ivan's story, but now we have Bimbur's story, and this is the gnome that took the backpack from Ivan, and his story is slightly different. We can already see that we have his name. In Ivan's story, he was just a nameless gnome, and what he tells us, he likes to play pranks on people. He doesn't always think before he acts, and it's not just because of the pranks. He's actually insulted because people don't see them anymore. So he's like a child that want to gain attention, so he steals stuff from people. And when he saw Ivan, he saw an ideal opportunity to take something from him. And Ivan, of course, noticed because he had his homework in there. And we can see in this picture also he's like running around, but they come to the elder, and there is also another gnome here. His name is Grom, and we also know his name now. And this is the brother of Bimbur that took the backpack. And we learn that Bimbur has his own perspective on life. He doesn't really believe that Ivan is their savior. He doesn't really believe that they will get out of the forgottenness just if Ivan will tell their story. He believes that being forgotten is not the end, but it's just another beginning. So that is his perspective and a slightly different story. But you have a different story already. So then we have the parts of the Bimbur story. After that, we have Grom, that is Bimbur's brother. So he has also a slightly different outtake on the truth, because he think his brother is childish. He always run around. He doesn't really think too much. He doesn't act. He doesn't think before he acts. But he is totally different. Like he's always still. He's always thinking. He think about himself. That is very wise. And he doesn't actually do anything when Bimbur takes Ivan's story. Um, So he's telling us he's just closely watching his brother, and as all of the gnomes are creatures from the forest, they kind of sense that a big change is coming, and all of them are dealing with the change in their own way. So he's closely watching his brother, and he just want to see if Bimbur would fall down, or and could he just keep running with the backpack on his back, because he believes that one day he would have to carry something very precious, and he just want to see his brother how does he do in a time of pressure. So that is the story of Grom. Called his outtake on the story. This is his story in short. We don't have to say plot or resolution. We can say rising action and falling action also. I just wanted to show you that. After that, we have an introduction for another story. This is the vices of the gnomes, the elder of the gnomes. So he tells the story again. He wasn't really expecting even, but he had a story prepared where the gnomes are on the verge of extinction, and that Ivan will have to tell their story. But what he is looking in this unusual event is actually Grom, because while Grom think he's very wise and very mature because he doesn't take action, actually what the elder think, he is paralyzed and he is afraid to take any action, and he just hides behind this facade of stableness and of maturity. So he just wanted to reassure himself that he is thinking correctly, and as we know, Grom didn't really um, move move a lot in this story, and he knew then that Grom thinks he proved some point, but he tells us he knows the truth. One day the moment will come when standing still is no longer a choice, and that's the ending of the elder story. So we learn something new, and we are sensing that some big change is going to come to the forest. And as I was speaking about the forest, we can also, as I said, take some objects, or we can take things from nature to be characters. And this story, this is the perspective of the forest. So the gnomes are offended because the people don't really tell their story anymore. But the forest is also offended because the people don't pay attention to it, the gnomes don't pay attention to it, and thinking to itself like, well, they will not have my shades anymore. They will not be able to hide anymore inside of me, and let's see how will they live if I'm not there anymore, and it's just waiting for an excuse to leave them all behind. And it's telling the story like all these little creatures are beneath my branches and enjoying, but they don't notice me. And in the moment when the gnomes tell Ivan, you should tell our story or we will be extinct, the forest can't take it anymore. It thinks, what about me? And we have that in the original story, if you remember, but it's not explained why the big storm is coming. The storm came as all of the gnomes were sensing, and the forest just decided to leave them, and it plucked out the trees from the earth and starting to disappear. Then all the gnomes started running, and this is where Bimbur and Gnome story came together because, as you see, Grom is still like angry and doesn't want to move and still pretend to be still, but he froze. And the precious thing he hoped his brother will carry was was actually him. And you can see the elder also. He's kind of he knew that that will happen, and what he did also is he took some seeds and some plants from the forest before it disappeared on them. And in the ending, we now know that Grom still didn't move. Bimbor was breathless, but carrying his brother, and the elder was holding the last piece of what he had been taking, the seeds he took. What we also know from this story is with the elder small handful of earth, the gnomes will have to learn again to rebuild what they once believed would always be there. So speaking about the forest, so they have to learn their lesson also. We can also tell a story from a perspective of the object, and the perspective of the object here, the main object in the story is the backpack, of course. And the backpack, it's telling it from its own perspective that his purpose is carry things and to be carried, and he's just telling us that is filled with book pencils, it's standing still in its place. But one time, and it's talking about the story, it was ripped away and jostled into unfamiliar hands, swinging wildly as someone ran. And the bag knew it's not the boy, it was somebody else. It was Bimbor. And it's telling the story from its own perspective now. He can sense it's a different weight, and he's like also, it's like almost weightless when the Bimbor is running with it. And he also saw like not running but measuring, and the bag was still just being carried. And then also the backpack here, the story about the gnomes. And in that moment, what's different about this story, other than it's from a perspective of object, it's the backpack notices when they gave Ivan, when they gave, what? When they gave Ivan the backpack back, the backpack had some roots from the forest and a magical golden leaf. So whoever took the backpack back to, let's say, real life would have a chance to have a small part of that magical forest, and maybe see and maybe plant some seeds of that forest in real life. Um, and also, I just wanted to show you how would this story be without all the perspectives. This is a neutral perspective. So if you didn't know anything, and this story would be a lot poorer, not as rich as with all the characters' perspectives, is we would have an